something investigators are now looking into, though, as they try to figure out a motive. And while the romantic partner is cooperating and is not currently facing any charges, one of their relatives tells Fox Digital he hates conservatives and Christians. He hated us. He was not raised that way, but he, over the years, has become really detached and been radicalized. Tyler, the alleged shooter, got a whole lot worse in the year they have been dating.
Republican lawmakers and members of the Trump administration took the stage at the Kennedy Center in Washington last night to honor Charlie Kirk. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt.
I would not be in this position if not for the heroic efforts of Charlie Kirk, who turned the political tide among young people in this country. Charlie was a beaming light in a world that is so consumed by darkness. It's going to take all of us in this room and all of us across the country to take up Charlie's torch.
And HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
I went on his podcast, and I think we approached each other with a lot of trepidation at that time, but by the end of the podcast, we were soulmates, we were spiritual brothers. He ended up being the primary architect of my unification with President Trump, which
Charlie Kirk's widow, Erica, has given a tearful address in which she thanked first responders for trying to save her husband's life after he was fatally shot on that Utah University campus.
2 days ago, my husband, Charlie, went to see the face of his Savior and his God. Charlie always said that when he was gone, he wanted to be remembered for his courage and for his faith. Charlie loved life.
A New Jersey nurse who reported a doctor who cheered and celebrated Charlie Kirk's assassination is suing after she faced disciplinary action. She's been suspended indefinitely without pay. 33-year-old Lexi Kunzel, a nurse at Inglewood Health, filed the suit Friday against the hospital. Dr. Matthew Jung and others saw the incident that occurred in front of patients and staff.
So I walked into the nurse's station and I just had learned about Charlie Kirk. I saw this guy. I didn't know who he was at the time, and he was standing there celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk, saying how he deserved it, he hated Charlie Kirk, and he had it coming to him. I look down, I see his badge, and it says doctor, and I said, "You're a doctor?" I said, how are you saying this as a doctor, that someone deserved to die?
Her attorney is John Paul Deal.
There are laws under various states, including New Jersey, where people like Lexi, nurses, healthcare professionals, can push back against conduct that implicates patient safety and welfare.
Supporters of abortion continue to speak out against Medicaid cuts for abortion providers.
The defunding of big abortion is called for in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. The Trump administration, along with members of Congress, do not want taxpayer dollars going to healthcare facilities that also perform abortion. Critics of that move argue this will deny women access to healthcare, and legal challenges have been filed. But Carol Tobias of National Right to Life Committee told AFN that women have many options when it comes to getting health care.
There are thousands of federally qualified health insurance health companies, clinics, hospitals that will be able to provide those services. Our tax dollars do not need to be going to an organization that kills unborn babies. Other healthcare services are available.
Other pro-life groups and publications have said as much, including Susan B. Anthony, Pro-Life America, Live Action, and Life News. I'm Chris Woodward.
More news available online at afn.net and download the AFN mobile app for your Apple or Android device. I'm Rusty P.
If we lose this cultural war, we're going to have a hedonistic, humanistic society.
Discover the story of the culture warrior Don Wildmon and how he went head-to-head with Hollywood, Playboy, the homosexual agenda, and the Disney empire. The movement Don started paved the way for Christians to boldly stand for truth and righteousness in a hostile culture. Watch Culture Warrior today for free. Visit culturewarrior.movie.
Welcome to today's issues. Join us for the next hour as we offer a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Ed Vitagliano.
And welcome to today's issues, everybody. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildmon. This week, I am joined in studio by Tony Vitagliano. Good morning, Tony.
Good morning.
That's why I always know that there's a bunch of people out when we drag you onto the show. Fred's out. Tim's out. Wesley is out this week. And so we're just like, who we got left?
Yeah, just throw open the shades and the sun shines in my eyes in the dark corner in the office.
Chris Woodward. Good morning, Chris.
I was the proud recipient of the Willy Wonka gold ticket.
Yes.
That's why I'm here today. I told my mom, I was like, hey, I'm going to be on the show.
Well, you're on the show fairly often. I mean, doing the news and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. And then Dr. Alex McFarland from an undisclosed bunker location somewhere in the east, I'm guessing. Welcome to the program, Alex.
Well, it's great to be with you all, and God bless each of you.
Where are you today? Are you at home?
I am in South Carolina, where we've been having a series of biblical worldview conferences, and down here, the one we were going to have last night got postponed till October 3rd. But we did have a big prayer meeting at a wonderful church called Low Country Community Church. Pastor Steve Fairchild and hundreds and hundreds of people last night came out to remember 9/11, but also to pray for the family of Charlie Kirk and pray for our nation. So we're in South Carolina, but very honored to be on with you all on today's issues.
Well, Alex, let me just ask you something here. By the way, folks, if you're listening, Steve Paisley Jordahl will be joining us as he typically does in the 11 o'clock segment. And you're not going to want to miss that. Steve has a lot of sound and some really encouraging stories about what God is doing in the nation in the follow-up to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So, Alex, before we get started and get to some of the news of the day, the first part of this segment is going to be about Charlie Kirk, but then continuing on in the program. I know it's only been, I guess, it's less than a week, but from what you're hearing, from what you're seeing, it seems like the assassination of Charlie Kirk has stunned the nation, especially young people, most of whom, I'm guessing, had heard of Charlie Kirk, whether they agreed with him or not, whether they supported him or didn't like him. They knew who he was and what he stood for. Are you getting any sense in these initial days about how that is playing out amongst young people?
Yeah, well, I think that they are just, stunned, as everybody is, that, like him or not, he was assassinated for dialoguing about ideas and issues. And my goodness, America is not a nation where you get assassinated for the free exchange of ideas, you know. Everybody. Ben Shapiro was on with Bill Maher over the weekend, and even Jay Leno said, "Look, if this is the track we're on, it's the end of free speech."
Right.
So a lot of young people, they said this is their MLK moment or their JFK moment for conservative young people. But last night at the prayer rally where I was at Low Country Community Church, the first 3 rows I was noticing, and it was a huge audience, but like the first 3 rows were teenagers and college students, it appeared to be.
Yeah.
So I do think that a lot of people of all ages, they get it. We must retain a Judeo-Christian republic with First Amendment rights where we can freely discuss and dialogue and debate. And I think, just like Erica Kirk talked about when Friday night the video was out and she really kind of threw out a challenge, that the fire of liberty and truth and, yes, godliness, that fire has been ignited in many a heart, I do believe.
Okay. Well, we will be visiting some of these issues during this program, and especially when Steve Jordahl is on. By the way, do want to also mention, folks, that at 10:30 we're going to have Lieutenant Colonel, retired Bob McGinnis, on to discuss a an article he wrote for Fox. This goes back several weeks about the danger posed by China. So it happens to fall this week. We were able to get Bob, so we may kind of interrupt some of the coverage on this show about the fallout following the murder of Charlie Kirk last week, but we will return to that subject, I'm sure, in Chris's segment and certainly in Steve's. But it is a huge threat for the United States, what is happening in the Western Pacific. So we'll be talking to an expert on that. He's also written a book that we'll talk to him about just a little bit, Preparing for World War III. So how's that for a Monday filled with heartwarming discussions? All right, Chris, what's your first take?
Yes. So the suspect, the man police say is responsible for the murder of Charlie Kirk, is due in court tomorrow for formal charges and the general things that pop up when somebody is arrested for a crime here. And, you know, news outlets are still out there saying things like suspect, authorities say allegedly, things like that, because he's not been convicted yet of this crime. But in the meantime, I've got some audio of FBI Director Kash Patel, who is going on television saying things like, "We have the killer in custody." Clip 1.
We flexed all resources the FBI had and surged multiple air assets as soon as this shooting occurred. And what we learned was there was evidence, DNA evidence, that could be collected and had been collected, including a screwdriver that was found on the rooftop. Also, we went over to the scene in the wooded area where the firearm was discarded, and the firearm had a towel wrapped around it. And I can report today that the DNA hits from the towel that was wrapped around the firearm and the DNA on the screwdriver are positively processed for the suspect in custody.
Someone else that's also talking to media about this is Utah Governor Spencer Cox. He said things like, "The suspect is not saying much, but other people that knew him well are." Clip 2.
He has not confessed to authorities. He is not cooperating. But all the people around him are cooperating, and I think that's very important. His roommate was indeed a boyfriend who is transitioning from male to female. He is cooperating with authorities as well.
Now, I bring those up because a lot of people out there are speculating on social media, which is one of the absolute worst places to get news, that maybe there was more than one person involved. But we've got audio, as we just played, from the FBI director who said things like, "We've got him," as well as the governor of Utah, who has really made sure that state and local law enforcement has done its due diligence here.
Tony, there reports have been since the shooting took place that there were prints, like a handprint, as the shooter climbed down from the roof, a forearm print, which I didn't know that was a thing. I always thought it was just fingerprints. So
yeah, I thought of that too.
Yeah, it just seemed like the forearm print. I didn't know you could identify people by that. But I will say this. We were talking about this a little bit before the show. If family members had not turned Tyler Robinson in, again, we do want to stress he is the alleged assassin of Charlie Kirk, he might have been long gone. I mean, he was when he jumped down off the building, he was close to an interstate, I think, or at least a 4-lane. So this. It's hard to know how this would have played out if his dad, for example, and I think his youth pastor had not turned him in or encouraged him to turn himself in. But this was almost a suspect that was gone into the wind.
Yeah, that is a little disturbing to me. The fact that it took. Not that it took so long, but there was some mishaps, I'll say, at the beginning of this, whenever all this was coming out. Now, we all have to understand that when something like as of consequence like this happens, you know, there are reports flying in, there's information going every direction, and the authorities are trying to take in and ingest what they can. But there were some mishaps, I would say, at the beginning of this. You know, there were a couple of claims, if I'm not mistaken, that, you know, at the initial onset of this situation that they had the person in custody, but both times I believe it turned out to be that wasn't the right person. So it is a little and I'm not in those situations, but it is indicative, I guess, of where we're at as far as the flow of information. So Chris mentioned social media, not always the most reliable source of information to get your news from. But, it is true. Like, if it hadn't been for his family tipping off the authorities, we may not even know where this guy is. He got, I believe, 3 hours away, 2 to 4 hours away. I can't remember the exact number. Yeah, that's how far away he was. And it's just, I guess I get confused sometimes as to how easy it is to track people down in certain situations versus others where, I go back to the January 6th thing. If you were a grandma waving your flag at the Capitol building, the FBI was knocking on your door, a couple of months later. So it's just how quickly it is to catch suspects. I guess just depends on the situation. Thankfully, they were able to find him and he got turned over. And I guess I have a follow-up question because I haven't seen any definitive answers. Maybe it's kind of come out. Do we know much about his parents? I've heard different reports that his parents were not conservative, but they weren't, left-leaning. That's what I've heard, Chris. Has that been kind of confirmed on what his...
I've seen conflicting information. I've seen some reports, some of them on social media, that the family had a hands-off approach to their son, which some people blamed as maybe contributing to this situation. Other news outlets have reported or described the family as conservative and or Christian.
Yeah, so I'm not saying that would factor into whether they turned him in or not, but that's just kind of what I had heard. I heard reports of. So
Alex, to Tony's point here, social media is, a lot of times the expression is feast or famine. With social media, it's feast and famine because there is a ton of information that is always flooding social media. But sometimes there's a famine of actual facts because you get so much speculation, so many people raising questions, suspicions, making accusations. I'm constantly shocked that more people aren't sued because of what they're saying on social media. I mean, I've seen stuff, it's not connected to this story, but I've seen people on X, for example, calling other people pedophiles. I don't know why that word is thrown around so much, and I'm thinking, you better retract that. You can get sued for that kind of thing. So it seems like feast and famine, and it makes the job of trying to sift through the information we're getting and trying to pick out what's true and what isn't. That's sometimes a difficult task.
Yeah, one of the challenges of social media, the filter comes off. I mean, I'm frankly shocked at a lot of what people say in comments, but sometimes discernment is gone too, Yeah. And so it's just a reminder, we've got to stay level-headed and, prayerful and think critically. But, overall, the response, I mean, guys, haven't you been encouraged that, there was a moment of silence during, one of the NFL football games, and so many celebrities have said good things on record. Now, there have been some heinously inappropriate, just terrible things said by some too, but overall, and because Charlie was, very vocal about his Christian faith, he was just unequivocally committed to the Lord Jesus. And of course, he was, committed to this country. But overall, I've been impressed with how many people of stature, celebrities and elected officials, have generally been pretty respectful and appropriate in their remarks. Ed, would you agree?
Well, yeah, it is. I've been kind of surprised, pleasantly surprised, on a couple of occasions. I know of two in terms of sports teams. There may be more, but the New York Yankees Major League Baseball, obviously, and then the Dallas Cowboys. I think both had moments of silence in the aftermath of what happened, which I was not expecting. And maybe other teams that did it. I don't know if there was any on the college level, but certainly on the pro level, probably some more. So that at least is a good sign. We haven't completely lost our minds. But,
yeah.
Chris, you said there are others commenting on the social media aspect.
Yes, and this is another soundbite from Utah Governor Spencer Cox. Really going back to the day that Charlie Kirk was murdered, Governor Cox had talked about how, hey, go home tonight, unplug from social media, spend time with your family members, engage with people in personal conversations, because as the governor has said a couple of times now, social media has been hazardous to our health. Clip 3.
I believe that social media has played a direct role in every single assassination and assassination attempt that we have seen over the last 5-6 years. And I can't emphasize enough the damage that social media and the internet is doing to all of us.
Well, Tony, you have a background in IT. I guess like any technology, it can be a double-edged sword. I think a lot of the, prayer vigils and people getting together to honor Charlie Kirk, that's probably been done via social media. Mm-hmm. It's an easy way to get a bunch of people together on short notice, but that cuts both ways because disruptive forces can also operate that way. I know in 2020, in the aftermath of the George Floyd death, that there were, of course, a lot of riots in major cities, and experts then said a lot of this is being driven by social media. People finding out, hey, we're rioting tonight at 8 o'clock, and so it is difficult sometimes to sift through the thumbs up or thumbs down when it comes to modern technology.
Yeah, I would say, in my opinion, social media for society has probably been, if you added up all the mounting evidence there is, it's probably been a net negative for our society. But I will say when it does shine, there are some good moments. So as Alex was saying, we have seen social media over the past few days since this assassination, lots of people expressing support and sharing their testimonies. We'll hear some stories along that line when Steve comes on here, but about this assassination drawing them closer to God, opening and picking up their Bibles for the first time, that kind of thing. So we have seen some positive elements, but for overall, absolutely, social media is just this negative feedback loop of whatever you want to see. Whatever you want to hear and whatever you want to see, that's all, the only people you have to follow. And then the vitriol just continues to increase, which I think is to my opinion, what made what Charlie Kirk was doing so unique and so necessary is because he got outside of the social media bubble. And you interact with people in person. And for the most part, you're going to be a different person talking to someone else live, face-to-face, than you would over social media. Now, that wasn't always the case. There's plenty of videos out there of Charlie Kirk arguing with people who, get ugly and nasty. But I think that's what made what he was doing so important and why it's so important that carries on despite the risk of violence and death.
Well, and Alex, this is something that you do as well, is talk to people face to face. I always think that when people are behind a mask, okay, and by a mask, when we're talking about social media, we're talking about these profiles that tell very little about who a person is. Now, people can dig down and find out who that person is, but people seem more open to being ugly and hateful to other people when you're not. Listen, I'll just say it this way: when you're guaranteed you're not going to get a punch in the nose, you will call people names. When you're talking to people face to face and you start talking ugly, you can get a punch in the nose. That keeps people, I think, a little bit more subdued. but when
Yeah.
they're behind the computer screen, maybe not so much.
Yeah, I think when people are just, looking at social media and just for a fraction of a second and they quickly fire off, an insult or something, it seems like it's just, keys on a keyboard. But, words do make an impact. Words can hurt people. Words can build people up. The Bible says that we should be slow to speak and swift to listen. And I think that admonition is kind of lost on social media. But guys, I got to say this. Last Thursday on Exploring the Word, we had on a friend of mine of about 19 years, Dinesh D'Souza. And he's a best-selling author. He's a conservative political commentator. He worked in the Reagan White House. But and Dinesh is a very, very committed Christian, by the way. But we had him on, and he talked about, he's spoken at a couple of hundred colleges, so have I. I mean, the word is Charlie had spoken at like 850 colleges, which has got to be a record. And online, you can see, Charlie Kirk certainly was subjected to his share of vitriol. But I have too. I mean, especially when talking about LGBTQ trans issues, and whenever I speak at a university and am asked about this, I really lean heavily on mental health research and academic journal articles that are unequivocally, the cutting edge mental health and oncology research is at least as condemning of transgenderism as any preacher could be. And yet when, I've been screamed at, I've had the middle finger waved at me, Dinesh and I were saying that, that gunshot, it could have been him or Frank Turek or me,
Yep.
But nevertheless, we have to bravely, lovingly, but decisively keep on calling our culture back to truth, don't we?
Yeah, amen. Hey, listen, we've got just for about a minute, Alex, talking about social media. I saw people, because Frank Turek was actually standing near Charlie when he was assassinainated.
Yeah.
And there were people on social media accusing Frank because he was, he touched his hat and, rubbed his arm and touched his face. He was accused of making signals to the shooter.
Oh, yeah.
And Frank Turek has been a friend to you and to Charlie for years. Just address that briefly before we go to break.
Yeah. Frank spoke for a lot of TPUSA events, so have I. And I think they had made like a tape loop. He scratches his arm and touches his hat. It was a blistering hot sunny day. And it's almost like they made a tape loop of it to try and contrive it, to make it look like some signal. That's false. Frank was there doing CPR, trying to save Charlie's life. I've known Frank since 1990. He's an incredible man of God.
Amen.
He's brilliant. So please don't believe the urban legend that kind of momentarily popped up over the weekend saying that he was complicit. That is utterly false, and it's not fair for an incredible man of God and country that Frank Turek is.
Amen. But that is, as Tony was saying, that is the dark side of social media, where people can be accused of things, and then those individuals disappear, but the rumor takes off, and it's unfortunate. I don't know what the solution is, except folks being more careful, more vigilant, to protect themselves, delaying their kids getting involved with social media as long as possible, those kinds of things. And because it can be absolutely devastating, and especially to young people, but also to adults. All right, folks, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, Lieutenant Colonel retired Robert McGinnis. We're going to be talking about the threat of China to U.S. interests around the world. We'll be right back.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildmon.
A lot of people will call me stupid. I know that. Some will feel sorry for me. Others will snicker a little and say that I should grow up. We humans have a way of expressing our feelings without ever uttering a word. And reading all the expressions, I may come to the conclusion that this will be the attitude of many toward me. But it doesn't really matter what others think of me. What's important is what I think of myself and what the carpenter thinks of me. Somehow, if I have his approval and blessing, all the other snide remarks seem to have a way of diminishing in importance. So I guess that's the reason that what others think of me just isn't too important. Their opinion being relatively unimportant, I feel free to make the following known about myself. I believe it happened. I believe that basically it happened just the way we've been taught that it happened. I believe they took a just man, the most just man ever to walk on the face of this earth, and they nailed him to a tree. I believe they did it because of their selfishness and sinfulness. I believe he allowed it to happen. I believe that he had the power to stop it, destroy them all if he wished, but I believe he allowed them to do it because of his great love. I believe it broke his heart that inside he wanted so much to be loved by those who sought to destroy him. I believe that he forgave them, that he held no bitterness nor hatred toward them, and I believe that in the irony of it all, his love was stronger than their hate. I believe that to this very day the most powerful weapon in the universe is the power of the love of the Galilean carpenter. I believe there's no weapon anywhere that can make a dent in it. And I believe that the only cure, yes, I said the only cure, to the basic troubles of the world today is the application of that love in our lives. I'm convinced that it has always been and will continue to be His will for us to love one another like He loves us. Yes, I believe that He did arise from the grave. I believe that He was fully dead when removed from the cross and placed in the tomb. And I'm convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that He conquered death with life, that He came alive again and lives today and will live forevermore. Add to that my belief that it is His greatest wish for us that we live that life with Him here and now and in the life that is beyond death. No, I can't explain it. No one can. But I can experience it. Everyone can. No, I'm not perfect. I'm a miserable creature, unworthy of anything on my own merits. But I have a Savior, and therefore I no longer need to depend on my own merits, only my faith. Laugh, snicker, call me stupid. I guess that's the highest compliment you could pay me. But don't do it too loud. It could be that one day you might share my beliefs.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildmon, a production of the American Family Association.
This only do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord and to seek Him in His temple. Psalm 27, verse 4.
American Family Radio. This is today's issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of today's issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of today's issues.
And welcome back to today's issues. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildmon this week. I am joined in studio by Tony Vitagliano and Chris Woodward. Remotely joining us is Dr. Alex McFarland. And we want to welcome to the program somebody who is no stranger to American Family News, and that is Lieutenant Colonel retired Robert McGinnis. He's the author of 12 books. I don't know what he does with his time. 12 books, good grief, including his most recent, Preparing for World War III. Bob, welcome back to today's issues and American Family Radio.
Well, thanks for having me, Ed. It's my pleasure.
Well, initially, I'd wanted to have you on to talk to you about an article that was published on Fox News August 25th. 5th. The title is Fiddling While Rome Burns, America Ignores China's Rising Red Tide. And I do want to get to that and talk a little bit specifically about China, but go ahead and talk about your book, your most recent book, Preparing for World War III. I'm sure it touches on China, but tell our listeners about your new book.
Well, Ed, the book really was written in anticipation that we weren't quite confident, I think, back last fall that Mr. Trump would be returning to the Oval Office. And as a result, I, kind of thought, well, if Mr. Biden was reelected or Ms. Harris was elected, then things would continue to go in a very bad way. Now, fortunately, Mr. Trump was elected, and he has brought some common sense to our foreign policy and has started the long up-ramp to improve our national security agenda. However, given what's going on in the world, even a reversal of the 4 Biden administration policies does not guarantee that what we face with the likes of communist China, the authoritarian Putin, the likes of what Iran has been doing, and obviously Kim and North Korea and other rogues and authoritarians around the world. The world is turbulent. There's obviously no guarantees aside from the return of Jesus Christ. So we have to recognize that we face a world of despair to a certain degree, of trepidation, and of course, given modern technologies, the situation and the proliferation of these technologies around the world makes for a very dangerous future. And so we have to be cognizant of that. We have to prepare accordingly. And so my book, Preparing for World War III, does not only a reflection on the past wars and where we are geopolitically today, but also delves into the technologies that are proliferating and how they endanger our future. And given our own divisive nature in the United States and the Western Alliance, you can obviously see, I think, the potential for something collapsing into what none of us ultimately want, and that is a return to global war.
Well, the title of your article that you wrote for Fox was Fiddling While Rome Burns. It's a famous idiom. You mentioned that the Chinese Communist Party is building, and I'm quoting from your article, the most formidable military challenge the United States has faced in generations. Why don't you expound on that for our listeners? Because China, according to you, is maybe even an existential threat to America.
Well, I do believe that it is an existential threat. In 2018, I had a book, Alliance of Evil, and I said we begin to see at that point Russia, North Korea, Iran, and others kind of circling wagons with China in opposition to the United States, but also the Western Alliance. And so what we have today is very compelling. Their Navy is larger than ours, even though they don't have the sophisticated aircraft carriers. They do have aircraft carriers, 3, probably we'll have 5 in another couple of years. However, our aircraft carriers, given the vulnerabilities thanks to significant ballistic missile capabilities that the Chinese have, is sobering because they could sink one of those. And even the war games that we conduct, either through computer generation or board games or more broadly, is very compelling evidence that, in a contest, whether it's over Taiwan or something over the South China Sea, that the Chinese would inflict heavy casualties against us, and we likewise against them. So there are a host of issues there. Their nuclear arsenal, especially the intercontinental ballistic missiles, is very sobering, even by comparison to the Russians. Today we're looking at a China that has arguably more throw weight than even the Russians, who have more nuclear weapons than any other nation, to include our own, in the world. And of course, we saw on the 3rd of September, a little over a week ago, a military display of even what we think is what we're calling the DF-61, a road mobile ICBM that can, range all over the United States with, multiple large megaton warheads if they wanted to. So the Pentagon's report that I've, followed since, I think about 2000 when it first came out, this congressionally mandated, has demonstrated time and again that the Chinese are ratcheting up a People's Liberation Army, which includes all armed forces there, much larger in terms of manpower, and their technology, of course, much of which has been stolen from the West, and especially the United States, is quite sobering. So we can no longer afford to dismiss the threat of the Chinese, not only in Eastern Asia, but globally, because they're sinking their teeth into the Arctic regions, even though they're not an Arctic country. They have a global sea power capability. They have a hypersonic capability. Their cyber capability is probably equal or close to equal to ours. And you just keep going on. And this is, all unclassified. The classified stuff is much more sensitive and pretty revealing.
Yes, sir. This is Tony Vitagliano. I have a question. So I did some research about China's shipbuilding capability, and so currently they lead in the global commercial shipbuilding market, and they have even done this, implemented this strategy of military and civil kind of melding them into the same, so that they integrate commercial and military production at its shipyards. So, which is something that we lag behind them in. And you mentioned in your article that Chinese President Xi Jinping has ordered the People's Liberation Army to be ready by 2027 to take Taiwan. Now, anytime a superpower projects or puts a date out there, you can kind of take that with a grain of salt. It can either be sooner or, maybe a little bit later. But regardless, if we take him at his word, and it is 2027 is kind of what they're eyeing for, how can we hope to catch up with their industry by then, which it seems like it may be, a decade ahead of us? And maybe we can't at this point. But I guess my question is, how would we counteract their ability to produce so much between now and when they suggest they'd be ready to move on Taiwan?
Yeah, Tony, great question, and that is a very difficult obstacle to overcome. We've depleted our arsenals to support the Ukrainian effort against Russia, post 2022, and to stand up factories that can produce these sophisticated, not only ground weapons, but to upgrade our warships is a major undertaking. And I delineate some of the requirements in preparing for World War III. However, we have it in the Defense Industrial Act, which could be put in place by President Trump, and he could say, look, we've got to start making more warships, cruisers, aircraft carriers, and the like. But you can't turn this on a dime. Those things take years to put the instruments, the construction, the architecture, the infrastructure in place in order to start doing this. We have been rather lax, arguably, over the years in returning to a robust capability, because post-Cold War, we thought that, our major adversaries were no longer going to be much like we faced with the Soviet Union during the Cold War. But China has proven us wrong. They have accelerated, and as you indicated, they fused civilian and military operations. And it's not just in the war manufacturing, but also in artificial intelligence and cyber, you name it. There's nothing that would stop the Communist Chinese Party from, trying to survive and to prosper and to replace the Western alliance and the world order to favor them. So these are all things on the mind of President Xi. And I think that we saw that 2 weeks ago there at the Shanghai Cooperative Conference in China when Putin and Xi were rather cozy. They brought in the new president of Iran as well as Kim Jong-un from North Korea. And they were all, yucking it up, I suppose you could say. And then, of course, at the parade on the 3rd of September, they put this massive demonstration on of the latest hardware that China is producing. So, and then I'd also caution you, though they've put in print 2027, as we saw in 1950 when China jumped into the war against us to reclaim South Korea. And then, of course, in Vietnam, they had a conflict, and they went well before the military said it was ready. And, of course, at this point, they forecast their military would be ready to take Taiwan by 2027, but that could be somewhat premature. So there are a host of issues here. I'm not saying that the alliance of these rogues is solid, but it's one of convenience. And at this point, they seem to be unified against us and the Western alliance. So we need to be very, not only prayerful about it, but we need to be, very objective. We face a growing alliance of very evil regimes that would, given their opportunity, change the course of this world.
Colonel McGinnis, Alex McFarland here. I've kind of got a two-part question. There's a term in military discussions about fit for service. If you would speak to the issue of the soldiers, ready to go, fit for service, their numbers versus ours here in America. And the other part of my question, if you could speak to it, has there been any talk about a return to the draft to try to, shore up numbers in the various, branches of the armed forces?
Yeah, the draft's always a lightning rod issue, and I think I'd go what the current HHS Secretary Kennedy has been saying is that the American people, the youth, are too fat. They have all sorts of other issues that they aren't fit for military service, which is true. And we would either have to change the criteria, and we're having, even though under Pete Hegseth, we've had an improvement in recruitment. You still have to train to a rigorous standard, and you still have to have the right combination of people in there. And I spent many years training people at the infantry school for the U.S. Army and understand pretty well the harsh combat training level intensity and the sheer being fit to fight that is required. I do believe we're turning a corner. Whether or not we're going to have the requisite numbers and have the level of training that's necessary is a matter of time, and also continuation of good leadership at the top. Starting with Pete and many of the generals that we have to make sure are put aside politics and are focused on readiness. And of course, we need a president that is going to continue with Congress to give us the resources that are necessary. So I would hope we don't have to return to a draft, but a draft may become necessary because much of the world does have to draft its people. Conscription is not something you can easily dismiss. So fit to fight is a fair question. We have internal readiness ways of measuring it on a monthly basis, and it really comes down to, can you project power? Can you go to dangerous places, put down crises with the requisite number of ships and airplanes and tanks and the like? And if you look at preparing for World War III, you'll see a couple of comparisons, one of which the Heritage Foundation put together, and I tend to agree with it, is that the only service that could fit to fight truly in a one-theater environment are our U.S. Marines. The others, don't have the long handle of being able to have the requisite number of personnel as well as the equipment that's pre-positioned and so forth. So posturing around the world isn't what it should be. We're focused too much now on NATO and the Middle East, and we're under focused on the Far East, and that's, of course, where we expect the next major confrontation.
Our guest has been Lieutenant Colonel retired Robert McGinnis. He's the author of 12 books, including his most recent from last fall, titled Preparing for World War III. Bob, before we let you go, do you have a website where people can read your thinking on these kinds of issues on a regular basis?
I write for Fox News, and I also write for you folks as well as others. My books kind of speak for themselves, and I do a lot of television. And in fact, I have a new book coming out in November, AI for Mankind's Future, and it's written from a Christian perspective. So if people really wanted to understand the threat posed and the promises of artificial intelligence, and I just came out of finished a course at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology where, I kind of get my bona fides in terms of technology, so that when I talk about the theological implications and the technical implications and the broader global implications of this, it's the serious stuff. We need to think about that. And of course, I even look at the potential for prophetic end times scenarios with AI. So that perhaps you didn't expect me to say that, but I'm focused like a laser on where we are in our culture, but also where we are technologically and where this world is going. And there are a lot of things that we ought to be concerned about.
Well, Bob, make sure we have you back on when your new book comes out this fall, because that is a fascinating subject. It is frightening. And like a lot of technological issues, we were talking about social media earlier in the program. It's always a double-edged sword. So please let us know when the book's about to drop, and we'll have you back on. And I'm sure American Family News will pick your brain a little bit and find out what you've learned and what you are advising people to do. So thank you. Listen, thank you for all the work you do. These are areas that a lot of people need some expert information, expertise especially from a Christian perspective. So thank you for all you've done over the years. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. It's always my pleasure.
All right. That is Robert McGinnis, Lieutenant Colonel retired. Robert McGinnis, Bob McGinnis, as he's known on American Family News and American Family Radio. Tony, that's going to be an interesting book. I know you've got a lot of interest. I have a lot of interest in artificial intelligence. It's getting kind of freaky.
Yeah, well, I was going to say his most recent book, Preparing for World War III, or as I like to call it, Getting 5 Kids Ready for Bed Every Night.
World War III.
I've written that same book multiple times over.
People are going to get you to write the foreword for everything.
Yeah, that's right. No, yeah, in all seriousness, AI is the frontier of multiple industries. And as always, as human nature, our fallen nature, it is always at the forefront of military and conquest as well. That's generally how most technologies start out.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize
like
that.
The internet.
Yeah. It starts out as a way to, how can we more efficiently carry out war and harm our enemies? So, yeah. I'll be
before they harm us.
Yeah, that's right.
Guys, I don't mean to be silly, but when you were talking about preparing for World War III, I thought it was either about a choir practice or a church business meeting.
Yeah. Hey, church business meetings, man. People throwing elbows.
That's right. Yeah, if you want to.
I wanted pews, not chairs.
That's why I encourage people to watch hockey. You want to find out what a church business meeting is like?
Yeah,
that's right.
Hey, the color of the carpet, this will not stand.
Right, yeah.
That's right.
I didn't like those carpet squares.
The pastor sees the deacons coming in. It's just like the photo of Putin Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un, just the same photo, the deacons coming in for the meeting.
I do want to mention this real quick. Our Steve Jordahl has been interviewing Bob McGinnis about things like his AI book. Steve was able to get some advancements on that. And do check our Today's Issues Facebook page, because I just shared a little bit of what Steve reported for us over the summer. Author has real concerns about AI. So that'll give you a little something to read before you get Bob's book in November, if you get it.
Well, and we will have Bob back on because the advancements have been so blooming fast in what AI is enabling technologically, and the changes that will occur, in the economy, people's decisions when they're going to college about what they should invest their education dollars in. Anyway, the implications beyond law enforcement and military are staggering, and medical, in terms of having AI help with the world of medicine.
Yes,
and one thing, everyone's already frustrated is the videos that appear on social media. Now, Tony, let me just say this, just ask this real quick, like.
Yeah, there we go.
I see this on social media where young people will post. Now, you're starting to, what are you, 36?
36.
36. I'd have to ask your mom exactly how old you are. So you're not exactly young. You're closing in on 40. But young people are insulting people my age, baby boomers, because apparently I can't tell immediately if a video is an AI fake, but young people can. What is that a real thing?
I think there may be an age gap there a little bit, but I'll say you used to tell me the same thing. I used to poke fun at you whenever I was younger, and you would say, your time's coming. That's what you would always say. Your time's coming. So we got to remember, I'm a millennial, so everybody's got to remember, in your own generation, turnabout is fair play.
Yes.
So while we can recognize AI videos now, and it's kind of, we can poke fun a little bit at people posting videos of a dog carrying, a child out of the flood or out of a burning building.
Yeah.
It's easy to poke fun at that, but there'll come a day where my generation will be fooled, because this technology is only going to get better. I mean, there'll come a day where I'll watch, a trailer for a movie, and I'll probably find out later, like, the movie doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
And I'll be
real
fooled.
actors.
So I've mellowed out. I don't make fun of you nearly as much as I used to.
I anointed our Bronson Woodruff, our youngest and newest reporter. I anointed him the other day with being the find out if this is fake or not task. And I
so
said,
it's not just me.
No, because
not
unfortunately, with like Charlie Kirk and things with 9/11, there has been a lot of AI things, and people are just like, I have no idea if this is real or not, but it looks real.
Well, and it is frustrating, because I almost want to just give up on social media altogether, because I'm just thinking, well, if I don't know if it's real or not, then why even bother?
Well, that's why you just turn to reliable news sources like CNN, CBS, NBC. They'll tell you whether things are real or not.
That's right.
The movie Forrest Gump made me concerned about deep fakes.
Yes, because he interspliced. The actor was interspliced in historical scenes. That's right. I forgot about that, and that was in the 90s.
Zemeckis.
All right, folks, we're going to take a 5-minute break for news, and when we come back, Steve Paisley Jordahl will be here. You don't want to miss this. Some kind of very interesting things happening spiritually in our country. Steve will be here with that news.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
The enemy has pulled out all the stops to try to destroy the family for a very long time. That's why the American Family Association stands boldly in the gap to protect and strengthen this God-breathed institution. Visit afa.net today and discover the resources available for you and your family. And if you would, please take a minute to show your support. That's afa.net.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty P. The suspect in the assassination of Charlie Kirk will make his first formal court appearance tomorrow and is expected to be charged with murder. FBI Director Kash Patel says there is absolutely no doubt they have Charlie Kirk's killer in custody.
We flexed all resources the FBI had and surged multiple air assets as soon as this shooting occurred. And what we learned was there was evidence, DNA evidence that could be collected and had been collected, including a screwdriver that was found on the rooftop. Also, we went over to the scene in the wooded area where the firearm was discarded, and the firearm had a towel wrapped around it. And I can report today that the DNA hits from the towel that was wrapped around the firearm and the DNA on the screwdriver are positively processed for the suspect in custody.
Utah Governor Spencer Cox faulted social media for being a driving force behind the assassination of Charlie Kirk by fomenting extremism and poisoning the national discourse. Cox says social media is a cancer.
I believe that social media has played a direct role in every single assassination and assassination attempt that we have seen over the last 5-6 years. And I can't emphasize enough the damage that social media and the internet is doing to all of us.
Fox News medical consultant Dr. Mark Siegel agrees with that assessment.
He's right. It's extremely addictive. And by the way, ironically, Kash Patel, head of the FBI, when he first took office in March, right after he came in, they put out a warning, the FBI did, about the violent actors online, on social media, on online gaming that drew people in. Studies from Boston Children's Hospital have shown that people that spend more and more time online, especially teens and young adults, have a worse body image. There are studies out showing that if you're more than 3 hours a day on social media, you have twice your risk of anxiety and depression. And again, online gaming with all of the violence depersonalizes, you withdraw from society.
Testimony continues today in the federal trial against the man accused of plotting to kill then candidate Donald Trump in what was the second attempt to take the president's life during last year's campaign. Eben Brown reports from Miami.
Federal prosecutors are continuing to make their case against Ryan Wesley Ruth, who is accused of hiding in the hedges at the Trump golf course in West Palm Beach with a gun waiting to shoot President Trump as he played through in September of last year. On the stand at the federal court in Fort Pierce, Florida this morning is an FBI agent who searched Ruth's car, a Nissan Xterra, finding bank cards, a passport, handwritten notes detailing international flights, and 6 cell phones found under the driver's seat. Ruth is defending himself at trial and will be given the chance to cross-examine this agent.
An immigration enforcement organization says even utilizing War Department attorneys to aid with immigration cases, it is still going to take a long, long time to clean up the backlog left by the previous administration.
In an attempt to reduce the out-of-control backlog of U.S. immigration courts, the War Department plans to authorize 600 military attorneys to serve as temporary immigration judges who work for the Department of Justice. In a statement, Chief Pentagon spokesman Sean Parnell revealed that the DOW was, quote, identifying qualified judge advocates and civilian attorneys for details to serve in such a capacity. The move is part of the Trump administration's multi-pronged strategy to finally tackle the many overlapping crises plaguing our immigration system. Ira Millman is media director for the Federation for American Immigration Reform. He says the judicial system is so overloaded that it has ceased to function effectively.
And you had people who were coming in at the height of the crisis who knew that they weren't going to get a court date for 5, 6, 7 years. That was a great opportunity to come here, to be granted work authorization, to live here, to establish other reasons to be allowed to remain in the country.
And Melman says you've got to be able to move this massive number of people who are already in the system through the system.
We've effectively stopped more people from coming in, but the backlog is enormous, and you need additional judges to be able to clear these cases, to make determinations about who deserves to be here and who should be sent home. But even the addition of these judges is still only dealing with a small percentage of the problem.
I'm Chad Groening.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty P.
Hello, my name is Andy Miller, and I'm the president of Wesley Biblical Seminary based in Ridgeland, Mississippi. We are developing trusted leaders for faithful churches, and we do that based in the authority of Scripture and in the reality that Christians can be transformed. We do that also through bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees. We'd love for you to learn more about Wesley Biblical Seminary at wbs.edu, where we're developing trusted leaders for faithful churches.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Ed Vitagliano.
And welcome back to Today's Issues. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildmon this week, joined in studio by Tony Vitagliano from South Carolina, Dr. Alex McFarland, and now joining us in studio, Steve Jordahl, Steve Paisley Jordahl.
Good morning, everybody.
Paisley today.
Yeah,
I didn't get the memo. Everybody's got blue shirts on.
Yeah.
No one told me. I got set up.
Well, it's the better to mock you. That's what we do. We don't give you the memo and then mock you for not having the memo.
Right.
So nobody cares. Nobody cares how we dress except Steve.
Yeah.
They do care about the Paisley, but you're just
I want to
blue.
tell you, I dispelled a error this weekend. What's a conspiracy theory?
Got to dispel them, brother.
I saw the Philadelphia Eagles do 2 offsides during their tush-push thing. That has been a setup. Offsides. The line moved before the ball was snapped both times.
The O-line moves?
The O-line moved before the ball was snapped. So I think they've been cheating on this whole unstoppable play. Of course, it's going to be unstoppable.
I had not heard of the. I know what a tush push is, but
I have solved the.
You've solved
the mystery of the tush push. Yeah.
Well, that is a mystery that has long plagued American culture.
Yes.
So I don't even like saying it. It's just, so all right. So welcome.
Thank you.
And you brought some good stuff in. I think our folks are going to be blessed by a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about, but still kind of sticking with the very sad and shocking story last week of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. What have you got?
Well, so the question is, where does it take us from the assassination? What cultural relevance does it have? How are we going to respond as a nation? You and I were talking before we went on the air. Is there a revival going on? Is this going to be kind of a push towards that? I believe yes. I've kind of noted a revival. It's been in the back of my mind, and I see evidence of it under the kind of uncovered below the headlines. So you had that whole Asbury thing for weeks last year.
Right.
And then every time somebody from Asbury went to a different college, so the same thing broke out at that college.
You also had the baptisms on the West Coast.
Baptisms on the West Coast. They had Ohio State. They had a huge awakening. Tuscaloosa at Alabama. The same thing happened. Several colleges, and these were all preceded by somebody from Asbury walking and giving a testimony on that campus.
Wow.
It's amazing how that happened. But, yeah, something is happening out there. And I wanted to share a couple things. So over the weekend, they had a memorial service at the Kennedy Center. Several people were there. Robert Kennedy was there. I believe J.D. Vance was there. A lot of people spoke. And I wanted to play a couple things that I heard there. The first thing, we're going to start with Robert F. Kennedy, who I guess was Robert Kennedy. Charlie Kirk was the guy that started the Trump-Robert Kennedy relationship. He's the one that said, you got to look at Robert Kennedy, told the president.
Yeah.
So Robert Kennedy and Charlie Kirk have a history. And I want you to hear what Robert Kennedy said about the death of Charlie Kirk at this particular event, Cut 11.
And I had a conversation once with Charlie where we were talking about the danger that we both faced from challenging entrenched interests. And he asked me if I was scared to die. And I said to him, there's a lot worse things than dying. And one of the chief among those is losing our constitutional rights and having our children raised in slavery. And I said to him at that time, I said, sometimes our only consolation is that we can die with our boots on. We can die fighting for these things. Charlie gave his life so that the rest of us would not have to suffer those fates worse than death. Now it's our job, and he's no longer there to lead us, to rush in and fill the breach and win this battle for our country, for God, and for our families. Thank you all.
Alex, do you think I'm just playing devil's advocate here. It's not really devil's advocate, because I believe that the situation is as serious as RFK Jr. just laid it out. But let me get your take. Is the situation that dire? What Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is saying, of course, in the context of Charlie Kirk and what he was doing, are you and I, are we making more of this than it really is? Is our country in danger? Our liberties actually in danger of slipping away? Or is this just hyperbole?
No, our liberties are absolutely in danger of being stolen away from us. And yes, the situation is dire. Look, we're believers here. We trust in God. But do you know, so many of our leaders early on said, like James Madison, October 11, 1789, James Madison, he said that, posterity, you have no idea the price that was paid by my generation to win your freedom. I hope you make good use of it. And George Washington, I believe the first words he said upon being inaugurated as our first president, George Washington said, quote, "The sacred fire of liberty has been entrusted to the American people." And so we've got to preserve it. Yes, what's interesting, it's unsettling. There are those that they think they are like globalist, and they don't like our Judeo-Christian constitutional republic because it stands in the way of like some global, utopia. But here's the thing, the devil hates America because for 2 centuries plus, America has been at the absolute forefront of the fulfillment of Christ's Great Commission. So there are players and pawns that are against America, and they don't even know why. But ultimately, the fight for our future is a fight about light versus darkness, the souls of people, and it's a spiritual battle, Ed. I really believe that.
Tony, what are your thoughts on what Alex is saying and what RFK Jr. is saying about the existential threat to our liberties, which I will admit many Americans have just simply taken for granted as if they cannot be lost?
Yeah, it's to me the most disturbing aspect of what happened to Charlie Kirk was that he took a stand for his biblical worldview and for Christian values and his faith,
and he was combative,
and he was combative, right? We get that, but he just engaged in civil discourse. It's cordial, respectful. I've seen clips of him demonstrating compassion towards people who are, start out, combative and aggressive. And it just kind of starts to turn them, and that you could see their demeanor even turn. So that was all he did. And if your shtick, so to speak, it's the only way I can think of to describe it, is just having open dialogue with people, bringing people who disagree with you to the front so you can discuss ideas. If that was all you were doing and that got you murdered, then it is we're already probably 1 or 2 steps ahead of where we thought we were. Right. Where even I thought we were.
Yeah.
Obviously people protesting and interrupting, that's been going on. People burning city blocks, taking over city blocks, that kind of stuff has been going on. But this happening kind of demonstrated to me that we are a lot closer than what we thought before. And
Well-
so warnings from RFK are absolutely warranted.
Well, because I saw in the aftermath of a lot of people did on social media, and I use X. This wasn't so much on Facebook, but on X, I saw people posting comments, just dozens and dozens. I don't know how much this went on, but people saying, okay, do Ben Shapiro next.
Yeah.
Do President Trump next. And I was just thinking, are you kidding me? You're saying that the assassinations should continue, and these are people who not only have the right to vote,
right,
but they are certainly going to be on the other side when it comes to our liberties. So
You guys might remember last week we played a clip of Virginia Senator Tim Kaine being astonished that someone would actually think that our rights did not come from our laws, that they come from God.
Right.
That's what the that's what the Iranians think, that their rights come from God.
He was calling that a theocratic idea.
Yeah, he was shocked that anybody would believe that. Now, as Ted Cruz pointed out, that is literally the founding principle of our nation.
Yeah.
But how close are we to losing rights when a U.S. senator thinks that he has the right to give them and take them away?
From the state of Virginia, the state where Thomas Jefferson
of all people
was from, who wrote the sentiments
Yeah.
that Tim Kaine was saying don't really exist except in theocracies like Iran.
Exactly.
All right, so we also have, in terms of what kind of Alex was talking about too, in terms of the way back from where we are, RFK Jr. This, I'll admit, I got a little choked up when you played this morning in our story meeting. Play this clip about RFK and the reaction of a family member to what happened.
Yeah, he's talking about a niece that was going to college in Europe and what happened with her. Let's listen to cut 10.
Yesterday, my 17-year-old niece left for Europe to go to college. And while she was packing, her mother, Amaryllis, my daughter-in-law, noticed that she had put a Bible in her suitcase. And Amaryllis was curious about it. And she asked her, and Zoe said to her, I want to live like Charlie Kirk.
Wow.
That's stunning. Now we have all kinds of. We talked about, and we are going to play something else along these same lines. I've been seeing several of these clips. I played one this morning to our story meeting. We're not going to get to it. This young man who was making a video was talking about, it was he and his wife, their anniversary, and she had bought him a suit. He was thrilled. They don't come from means. It's kind of the opposite. This is striking. This is the opposite. RFK Jr. talking about his niece going to college in Europe, okay? Mm-hmm. So there is that set of people, okay? And she is interested in God. She wants to live like Charlie Kirk. The video I was watching was this young man who said, this is the most expensive. I've never had a suit before. And he was talking about, it's a $300 suit. He was proud of that. He said, we've never had much. I am starting to make some money now. We're glad for that. But he said, I want to live like Charlie Kirk. And he said, I'm going to go to church. I'm wearing this suit to church. For the first time, he said, I've never thought about God, and I'm starting to think about God now. And he wants to go to church. So that's at the other end of the economic spectrum from the Kennedys, but the same impact. And this was a startling story about RFK Jr.'s niece.
Yeah. And it's not the only one. I was wondering what the reaction at churches was going to be this weekend. At our church, our pastor referenced the Charlie Kirk death, and his point was you may not be able to influence a nation for God and stand up for truth for a nation, but you can influence your family. You can be the hero to your family and stand up for your family for truth. And he invited anybody that wanted to come down to the front to kind of rededicate and to pray toward that end. And our church was flooded. Dozens and dozens of families and people came down to pray at the front. And I was wondering...
And that's unusual, right? For so many...
It is. I mean, it's a Southern Baptist church, so we have an invitation every week. And sometimes we'll have people that come and want to join the church. Someone
Right.
wants to get baptized. Every so often, someone will come and say they want to accept Jesus. But to have a crowded altar at the front, that it doesn't happen often.
Right.
And it did for our. And I was wondering if maybe a lot of stuff happened. Here's another story that I found, and I don't know. I can't verify this one. Rang a couple bells somewhere. There's some background music to this that, it sounds right, though. And this is a woman, again on X, who was talking about how the assassination of Charlie Kirk affected her. And I want you to listen to 15.
I've never, ever opened a Bible before. In fact, I know nothing about Christianity or Jesus. But yesterday, after witnessing the assassination of Charlie Kirk on the internet, and it just being so normal to people, like watching this man get shot in the neck, and everybody being so desensitized and just going on with life like it was normal. Something was calling me to my husband's Bible. But for the very first time yesterday, I grabbed the Bible. I don't know what I'm looking for in the Bible. I don't know why I felt like I needed to grab the Bible. But I grabbed my husband's Bible. And the page that I opened up to was the verse, John 8:32. And it said, "Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." And I feel like that changed me so much.
Alex, this kind of stuff is powerful. I'm with Steve. I don't know who this young lady is. It sounds sincere to me. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be a cynic. But at the same time, the power of the gospel and the power of the Holy Spirit to change hearts. I don't remember whether it was Steve Saint or one of those 5 missionaries that died, I think, was it Ecuador back in the 50s? Maybe it's Nate Saint. I think Steve Saint was an athlete or something. But anyway, one of them said prior to being martyred that the 20th century has no idea of the kind of power we're talking about and does not know how to reckon with the kind of power we're talking about in the gospel and God. Speak to that. I mean, I don't know whether we're, and as Steve said, I've been paying attention over the last several years, not just in this country, but in other parts around the world, in Iran and places like that, where God is moving. And you know what? He doesn't ask permission. Mm-hmm. He doesn't ask permission from mullahs or from presidents or university presidents. God does what he wants. But if we are in the midst of some sort of awakening in this country, God chooses his means and what he wants to use. Talk a little bit about the kind of power that military leaders and political leaders and economic leaders really have no idea how to reckon with when we're talking about the power of God.
Well, Romans 1:16, the Apostle Paul said the gospel is the power of God unto salvation. And, of course, the church of Jesus Christ, we have prayer, and it's been said prayer is the nerve that moves the muscle of God. Mm. And so we have a great opportunity here. Folks, I will tell you, people, but especially young people, are spiritually hungry. Mm. They really, really are. There was a Lifeway study like 2 years ago that said of like Gen Z that 86% who have no church background said that they would, quote, they would strongly consider attending a church service if somebody invited them.
Oh, wow.
And I would suspect that number is even higher now. So let me just say to every Christian and pastor and church member, look, emotions are very raw. People are frankly afraid. And, we just did 7 summer camps. We had 1,200 teenagers, and I want to tell you, they're asking all the right questions. They're very spiritually hungry. So there are people all around you. I guarantee that if you invited them to church, they would probably say sure. So we've got to maximize on this, but we can also remember, stronger than social media, stronger than the darkness of the world, is the prayer of God's people. And I just think that we need to seek revival like it's our next breath of oxygen. I got to say this, guys. Philip Yancey, do you remember? He's an author. At one time, he was editor of Christianity Today when it was actually a good Christian magazine. But Philip Yancey said, and I heard him give a speech about where God was at work all around the world, and somebody said, well, just summarize. Philip Yancey said, well, I'll summarize it this way. God goes where he's wanted.
Mm.
Wow. The polling suggests in the United States right now that Gen X men, young men, are coming back to the faith. And a lot of people are saying that Charlie Kirk had a large influence on that. Part of the reason that the young men and Gen X are coming back to church and accepting religion and the faith are because of the efforts of Charlie Kirk. He of course, is encouraging young women to follow the lead. But there is a hunger among young people, like Alex is saying.
Yeah, and to me, it drives, what really drives home the responsibility and the privilege. What happened to Charlie Kirk drives home the responsibility and the privilege we have as believers to be the hands and feet of Jesus, to represent Jesus to the world. Because we can talk all we want to, but until our actions and our life reflects the character of Christ, people aren't really paying attention. And what's made people pay attention is that Charlie Kirk, he went around and talked a lot of people, had a lot of speeches, but giving his life for his faith, I think, has had a huge impact on people, because that is the ultimate demonstration of a Christ-like example. And that's to me, I think that's what's also making people pay attention. Wow, this man, not only did he talk about his faith, but he was willing to die for it.
People are going to remember where they were when they heard the news. Mm-hmm. Charlie Kirk was killed. It's one of those cultural events, I think, that's gone kind of viral.
Absolutely.
So, I think there's something happening. And I believe that we're just seeing the beginnings of it.
Well, and folks, you may be out there listening. I just want to maybe address this. You may be thinking, well, why are they talking about Charlie Kirk? Charlie Kirk, Charlie Kirk, Charlie Kirk. We're paying too much attention to a person's influence. Well, just remember, Billy Graham, and I'm not comparing the two, Charlie Kirk to Billy Graham, but God does sometimes raise up individuals. Don Wildmon, out of a small Methodist church. We've seen some of those kinds of heroes pass away over the last, several years. The group of individuals from the 70s and early 80s, whether it's Jerry Falwell, D. James Kennedy,
James Dobson, Don Wildmon.
Right. So God raises up people and uses them as he wills. So we're not saying that Charlie Kirk is an apostle or anything. We're just making note of the impact he had. And, Hollywood has spent decades and decades ridiculing Christians and creating a template that many of these young people thought all Christians were like. And yet they went to their campus and they watched Charlie Kirk, yes, firmly proclaim his faith, but also lovingly and charitably and reasonably interacting with people he disagreed with politically. And I think people were touched by that, because this was a real Christian, not a Hollywood cartoon. And maybe that's why God had used him to impact him. All right, folks, that's all the time we have. Alex, thank you, sir. I want to thank
you. God
Tony,
bless you.
and Steve, and Chris Woodward. Lord willing, we'll see you right back here tomorrow for more of Today's Issues.
Hey, my name is Wesley Wildmon.
And I'm Walker Wildmon.